World War II unfolded across continents, pitting ideologies against stark realities. Nazi Germany propagated racial hierarchies through official doctrines, categorizing black individuals as subhuman, incapable of intellectual or courageous contributions to warfare. Publications, speeches, and laws like the Nuremberg Laws reinforced these beliefs, prohibiting certain interracial unions and dismissing entire groups as unfit for modern combat. Leaders like Adolf Hitler upheld these views, expecting minimal resistance from those deemed inferior. Yet, in the skies over Europe, this narrative began to unravel. The United States Army Air Forces included the Tuskegee Airmen, black pilots trained rigorously at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. They formed units such as the 99th Fighter Squadron and later the 332nd Fighter Group. Deployed to North Africa and Italy in 1943, their missions involved escorting bombers deep into enemy territory and engaging German aircraft. Initial German underestimation led to costly errors, as these pilots amassed 112 aerial victories and maintained lower bomber loss rates compared to other units. The reality of their skill challenged Nazi propaganda head. 32 Tuskegee Airmen became prisoners of war, their experiences revealing profound contrasts. Capture typically followed intense combat or anti-aircraft fire, leading to interrogations where German officers displayed detailed intelligence about their units, including base locations and command structures. Treatment adhered to Geneva Convention guidelines for officers, with integration alongside white American POWs in camps like Stalag, Luft 3 in Poland. This setup fostered interactions absent in segregated America, where black and white personnel used separate facilities. White bomber crews expressed gratitude, recalling the red-tailed P-51 Mustangs that protected their missions. The irony was striking. Enemy territory offered a degree of equality denied at home. Lieutenant John Ellis, a composite figure inspired by real airmen like Alexander Jefferson and Harold Brown, embodies these experiences. Shot down in August 1944 while targeting radar installations in southern France, Ellis expected brutality aligned with Nazi ideology. Instead, he encountered structured processing and interrogations focused on military intelligence. This introduction establishes the divide between propaganda and reality. Nazi doctrines predicted easy dominance over inferior foes, but the Tuskegee Airmen's combat performance and captivity experiences proved otherwise. Ethical reflections emerge from small acts of humanity, such as adherence to prisoner protocols and shared moments among captives. A letter from home would later symbolize personal connections, bridging ideological divides. Historical context deepens the narrative. American prejudices in the 1920s mirrored some German views, with reports questioning black soldiers' capabilities for technical roles. Yet, initiatives like Public Law 18 in 1939 opened training opportunities, leading to the formation of black flying units. Combat successes, such as the Anzio battles in 1944, where multiple enemy aircraft were downed despite inferior P-40 Warhawks, demonstrated their skill. Upgrades to P-51 Mustangs in 1944 equalized their capabilities, culminating in the destruction of 3 Me-262 jet fighters in Berlin in 1945. Earning a Distinguished Unit citation, these achievements set the stage for their captivity experiences. In camps, Nazi propaganda faced daily contradictions. Guards adhered to conventions, prisoners shared barracks, and bonds formed across racial lines. The reality of war exposed flaws in ideological doctrines as humanity persisted through routines and interactions. This section lays the foundation for exploring captivity, where mercy appeared in adherence to rules and a letter highlighted personal resilience. The narrative invites reflection on prejudice, resilience, and progress. As the war progressed, these experiences contributed to broader societal shifts, influencing post-war military integration in 1948 and eventual recognition, such as the Congressional Gold Medal in 2007. The introduction captures the core tension. Propaganda's false promises crumbled against undeniable capability and shared humanity, both in the skies and behind barbed wire. The moment of capture marked a significant shift for Lieutenant John Ellis, a composite figure inspired by real Tuskegee Airmen such as Alexander Jefferson. On a mission in August 1944, his P-51 Mustang took anti-aircraft fire while targeting radar installations in southern France. The aircraft spiraled, forcing him to eject. Parachuting into a dense forest, he landed amidst underbrush, heart pounding with uncertainty. German patrols quickly surrounded him, rifles leveled, expecting hostility rooted in Nazi racial doctrines that labeled black individuals as inferior. Ellis braced for violence. Instead, the soldiers conducted a systematic search, removing his sidearm, flight maps, and personal items. They marched him to a nearby outpost with clipped, professional commands. No immediate aggression followed, defying his fears shaped by propaganda. This initial encounter hinted at a structured process, contrasting the brutality he anticipated. Transported by truck to an interrogation center, Ellis faced German officers seated behind a desk piled with files. Their knowledge was startling. They knew his unit, the 332nd Fighter Group, its base at Ramitelli Airfield in Italy, and even personal details like his Indiana hometown. Questions probed mission tactics, aircraft capabilities, and squadron strategies. Adhering to protocol, Ellis provided only his name, rank, and serial number. The officers noted his composure, one remarking on the unexpected skill of black pilots, a statement clashing with Nazi ideology that deemed such proficiency impossible. Transferred to a holding area, Ellis joined other captives, including white American airmen. Recognizing the distinctive red tail patches on his uniform, some approached with gratitude, recalling missions where Tuskegee escorts protected their bombers from Luftwaffe attacks. In this shared plight, race receded, and survival forged a bond. Arrival at Stalag Luft 3 in Poland deepened these impressions. The camp sprawled across a barren landscape, enclosed by barbed wire fences, and guarded by what officers were housed in barracks, and Ellis was assigned a bunk among white American POW. Unlike U.S. military bases, where segregation dictated separate dining halls and barracks, no racial separation was enforced here. Rank unified them, a stark contrast to American practices. Guards issued basic supplies, blankets, tin cups, and utensils. Red Cross representatives ensured parcels arrived, containing canned meat, chocolate, and soap, supplementing meager camp rations. Initial meals consisted of thin soup and coarse black bread, tastes that faintly evoked home but underscored its distance. Guards displayed varied demeanor. Some were stern, maintaining strict order, while others showed curiosity, asking about American life. Ellis described Detroit's streets and family gatherings, and one guard nodded, sharing a brief mention of his own rural hometown. Ideology lingered, but actions adhered to Geneva Convention guidelines. Medical examinations followed capture. Minor bruises from the parachute landing were treated with bandages in the camp infirmary. Orientation sessions outlined camp rules. Officers were exempt from labor, per international agreements, allowing time for adjustment. Ellis reflected on his journey. Rigorous training at Tuskegee demanded 300 flight hours, exceeding the 200 required of white pilots. Washout rates were high, ensuring only the elite advanced. Deployment to North Africa and Italy brought combat over Sicily and Germany, where his unit's red-tailed Mustangs proved their worth. Now confined, he remained a pilot in the eyes of captors and peers. The first nights were cold, with distant artillery echoing. Fellow posts shared survival tips, hide valuables, trade parcel items for necessities. A white bomber pilot recounted a mission saved by red-tail escorts, thanking Ellis personally. This affirmation eased the isolation of capture. These encounters revealed complexities. Nazi propaganda suggested harsh treatment or worse for black captives, yet reality showed adherence to military protocols. Occasional incidents occurred outside the camp, local youths shouting slurs, but guards intervened, maintaining order. The structured environment contrasted with expectations of chaos or cruelty. Historical records confirm 32 Tuskegee airmen became POWs, often shot down during missions like radar strafing or bomber escorts. Interrogations were thorough, with German intelligence detailing squadron commanders and even family backgrounds. As Jefferson noted in his accounts, integration in camps like Stalag Luft 3 was standard for officers. Unlike the segregated U.S. military, white posts, particularly B-17 crews, frequently expressed gratitude for red-tail protection, forming natural bonds impossible in America's segregated society. The irony was profound. Equality emerged in enemy captivity, denied at home. This context sets the stage for the captivity narrative. First encounters shaped perceptions, revealing a gap between propaganda and reality. Guards followed rules, prisoners built community, and small acts of humanity shared stories. Respectful exchanges pierced ideological barriers. The transition from combat to confinement was jarring, yet the treatment as officers provided a foundation for survival. Reflections on this irony grew. Why did equality exist here, under enemy watch, while absent in American barracks? These initial impressions framed the months ahead, where routines, a symbolic letter, and crises of belief would further unfold the story of resilience and humanity amidst war's harsh realities. Life in Stalag Luft 3 settled into a structured rhythm for Lieutenant John Ellis, a composite figure inspired by Tuskegee airmen like Alexander Jefferson. Each morning began with roll call. Prisoners lined up in the cold dawn, breath visible in the Polish air. Guards counted heads, ensuring no escapes. Breakfast followed, coarse black bread and ersatz coffee, a bitter substitute that paled against memories of family breakfasts in Indiana. The taste evoked home Sunday mornings with eggs, warm biscuits, and real coffee shared around a crowded table. These contrasts sharpened focus, grounding Ellis in both survival and nostalgia. Mornings often involved light activities for officers, exempt from labor under Geneva Convention rules. Bliss organized lectures in barracks, covering topics from aviation mechanics to American history. Ellis contributed, sharing flight techniques honed at Tuskegee. White airmen listened attentively, asking questions, fostering a sense of shared purpose. Afternoons brought exercise to combat monotony. Prisoners walked the compound's perimeter, enclosed by barbed wire and watchtowers. Some improvised soccer games with ragged balls, the physical activity a bulwark against despair. Guards observed, rarely intervening unless rules were breached. Weekly Red Cross parcels were a lifeline, delivering canned meat, chocolate, soap, and cigarettes. These items sparked a trading system. Cigarettes became currency for extra food or clothing. A tin of jam, rare and sweet, reminded Ellis of apple pie from home, conjuring images of summer picnics and laughter with siblings. Evenings were for conversation. POWs gathered in barracks, exchanging mission stories. Ellis recounted the Anzio battles of 1944, where his unit downed multiple enemy aircraft. White bomber pilots shared tales of red-tailed escorts saving their crews, strengthening bonds across racial lines. Mail call was a cherished ritual. Letters, though censored, carried news from home. Ellis awaited word from his family, each envelope a thread to life beyond the fences. The contents updates on siblings, a garden's progress, or a mother's prayers, or stained hope. These moments highlighted a stark contrast. Segregation divided America, but in this enemy camp, equality prevailed among prisoners. Guards maintained distance, but showed occasional humanity. One shared a cigarette, asking about American farms. Ellis described Midwest fields, finding common ground in rural life. These exchanges pierced Nazi ideology, which dismissed black capabilities. Health checks were routine. The camp infirmary treated ailments, from colds to minor injuries. Bandages covered cuts from capture. Spectacles were repaired when needed. Maintaining health preserved strength for the long haul. Entertainment emerged organically. POW staged plays, using makeshift props, or sang songs in the chapel area. Ellis led spirituals, their melodies echoing home. White prisoners joined, their voices blending in unity. These moments built community, defying the isolation of captivity. Memories of home anchored sanity thoughts of parents, church services, or neighborhood streets. Dreams of return fueled resilience, yet routine tested endurance. Boredom was a constant foe. The camp library offered books, from history to novels, prompting reflections on wars, causes, and racial doctrines. Ellis pondered how Nazi beliefs crumbled against evidence of his unit's skill. The irony persisted. Segregated America contrasted with integrated captivity. Guards followed rules despite their ideology, offering small mercies, a shared blanket in the cold, a nod of acknowledgement. Historical records detail life in POW camps like Stalag Luft 3. Officers enjoyed privileges, such as exemption from work, allowing time for intellectual pursuits. Lecturers covered practical and academic subjects, with Tuskegee airmen contributing expertise. Parcels were critical, supplementing meager rations of soup, potatoes, and bread. Trading systems flourished, with cigarettes as a universal currency. Healthcare, though basic, was consistent, with doctors addressing injuries from capture or camp life. Psychological survival relied on camaraderie. Airmen shared combat experiences, with bomber crews praising Red Tail escorts, as documented in accounts like Jefferson's. Letters were vital. Managed by the Red Cross, carrying censored but precious news. Faith played a role, with prayer books and chapel services sustaining many. Alerts disrupted routines. Distant bombings sent prisoners to shelters, uniting them in fear. Post-alert work resumed, reflecting resilience. The contrast between camp and home was profound. In America, segregation barred black airmen from equal facilities. In German camps, rank superseded race, fostering unity. Guards, trained in Nazi ideology, adhered to conventions, some showing curiosity or kindness. These interactions challenged propaganda's dehumanizing narrative. Ethical reflections arose. Why did humanity surface in enemy territory but not at home? Routine built a fragile community. Hidden radios, risked at great cost, brought BBC broadcasts, kindling hope of liberation. As months passed, routines became familiar, yet home memories remained vivid. This chapter captures the balanced daily survival grounded in structure. Inspired by nostalgia, the reality of integrated captivity defied propaganda, revealing humanity in shared struggles and small acts, setting the stage for deeper reflections on a symbolic letter and crisis. A letter arrived on a grey afternoon in Starlock Luft 3, transforming the monotony for Lieutenant John Ellis, a composite figure inspired by Tuskegee airmen like Alexander Jefferson. Standing in the mail call line, he heard his name. A guard handed him a thin envelope, its handwriting instantly recognizable as his mother's. Retreating to his bunk in the barracks, Ellis traced the script with his fingers, a tangible link to home. He opened it carefully, wary of tearing the fragile paper. The words unfolded: news of family, the garden blooming in Indiana, siblings healthy, and a mother's prayers for his safety. Each sentence carried weight, bridging the distance between the barbed wire of Poland and the familiar streets of his hometown. Amid captivity, this letter became a symbol of connection, embodying hope and resilience in a world defined by confinement. The letter evoked vivid memories. Before deployment, Ellis had written home, promising a safe return. Now, the roles reversed. His family sensed strength across oceans. The paper held a faint trace of perfume, a sensory touch from afar that recalled his mother's embrace. Fellow prisoners respected the moment, some reading their own letters, others waiting silently. Ellis absorbed each line, finding encouragement in simple updates, a neighbor's kindness, a church event. These details grounded him, countering the isolation of camp life. The letter symbolized mercy, facilitated by the Red Cross, which ensured delivery despite censorship. German guards, bound by Geneva Convention protocols, permitted this communication, a small act that contradicted their ideology's dismissal of black humanity. One guard, observing the volume of mail, commented curiously. Ellis nodded, a brief exchange that humanized the interaction. Sharing excerpts with bunkmates, Ellis read aloud a humorous anecdote about his younger brother. Laughter rippled through the group, easing the barracks tension. Tears were suppressed, but the emotional weight was clear. The letter represented proof that life continued beyond the fences, a reminder of purpose. In combat, letters had fueled motivation. In captivity, they sustained endurance. Ellis replied later, choosing words carefully under censors' eyes. Describing camp life vaguely, he assured his family of his health. The act of writing restored a sense of agency, defying the powerlessness of imprisonment. Other post-traded letter stories, strengthening bonds. A white airman shared news from his own family, finding common ground in shared longing. This moment marked a shift, transforming Ellis from a captive to a connected soul. Historically, letters were vital in POW camps like Starlock Luft 3. The Red Cross managed deliveries, ensuring censored but regular communication. For Tuskegee airmen, these letters linked them to families facing segregations, hardships in America. Accounts from airmen like Jefferson described the anticipation of mail call, each envelope a lifeline to normalcy. The contents family updates, prayers, or community news countered propaganda that denied black families depth or dignity. Ethical reflections emerge. The act of allowing letters, despite Nazi ideology, revealed cracks in dehumanizing narratives. Guards, trained to view black prisoners as inferior, adhered to protocols, permitting this small mercy. The letter's role was profound, fostering resilience and hope. It challenged the camp's isolation, reinforcing the will to endure. The letter also highlighted contrasts. In America, segregation restricted black airmen's freedoms, yet in enemy camps, they received mail like any officer. This irony underscored the absurdity of racial doctrines, both Nazi and American. The letter's arrival was a turning point, affirming personal worth against ideological dismissal. Guards' curiosity, as seen in fleeting exchanges, suggested a re-evaluation, however slight, of their beliefs. For Ellis, the letter was a touchstone. Carried through months of captivity, it symbolized not just family but the broader struggle of his community, whose support fueled his resolve. In the barracks, shared readings built community, as prisoners found solace in each other's stories. This chapter centers the letter as a powerful symbol. Its quiet presence stood out amid war's chaos, embodying connection, mercy, and defiance of prejudice. The act of receiving and writing letters asserted humanity, bridging divides between captor and captive, black and white, home and prison. As routines continued, this symbol anchored Ellis and his peers, preparing them for the crises of belief and eventual liberation that lay ahead. The letter's impact lingered, a testament to small acts that upheld dignity in the face of adversity. Long nights in Starlock Luft 3 brought doubt to Lieutenant John Ellis, a composite figure inspired by Tuskegee airmen like Alexander Jefferson. Lying on his bunk, surrounded by the creaks of the barracks and distant sounds of guards, he wrestled with questions. Nazi propaganda, labeling black individuals as inferior, echoed in his mind. Captivity challenged these notions. Guards treated him as an officer, adhering to Geneva Convention protocols. White American posts regarded him as a peer, thanking him for red-tailed escorts that saved their missions. Yet the irony gnawed. Why did equality exist in this enemy camp, but not in segregated America? Guilt surfaced. He fought for a nation that denied him basic rights. Shame followed, reflecting on America's hypocrisy championing democracy abroad while enforcing racial barriers at home. Doubt deepened about the war's purpose. Was he risking his life for a system that devalued him? This crisis of belief intensified during quiet hours. A guard's casual remark triggered deeper reflection. After a routine inspection, the guard praised Ellis's unit for their aerial skill, a comment clashing with Nazi doctrine that deemed black pilots incapable. This acknowledgement stirred unease. Ellis pondered the guard's own conflict, trained in ideology, yet witnessing evidence to the contrary. Did the guard feel shame for his beliefs? Similar questions haunted Ellis about his own country. Discussions among prisoners grew heated. In the barracks, a group debated the war's moral weight. Why fight for a segregated nation? Ellis shared stories of Tuskegee's rigorous training, the 60% washout rate, and the skepticism from commanders like Colonel Moon. White airmen listened, some expressing guilt for their prior indifference to segregation's toll. These exchanges exposed shared doubts, binding them in vulnerability. The crisis peaked during a raid alert. Late one night, sirens blared signaling nearby bombings. Prisoners huddled in a shelter, the ground trembling from distant explosions. Fear united them, black and white, officer and captive. In the dim light, Ellis reflected on survival. Death loomed as a possibility, sharpening his doubts. Why endure for a nation that segregated him upon return? Yet the shelter's shared silence revealed the truth. Humanity transcended race in moments of peril. Post-alert, as prisoners returned to barracks, Ellis reconsidered. The crisis forced clarity. Beliefs rooted in prejudice, Nazi or American, crumbled against evidence. His unit's 112 aerial victories, lower bomber losses, and jet kills in Berlin proved capability. Captivity showed equality in treatment. Mercy in survival resolved his doubts, replaced by resolve to endure. Historical accounts of Tuskegee airmen, POWs, like Jefferson's, describe such psychological crises. Captivity amplified reflection on dual battles against fascism and racism. Integration in camps, where rank superseded race, contrasted sharply with America's segregated military. White POWs, often B-17 crews, expressed gratitude for red-tail escorts, as documented in memoirs. These interactions challenged personal biases, fostering unity. Guards, while adhering to ideology, followed protocols, occasionally showing curiosity or respect. Jefferson recalled interrogators' detailed knowledge, suggesting recognition of skill. Ethical reflections emerged. How could systems uphold prejudice when evidence disproved it? Crises of belief were common, driven by isolation and irony. Alerts, though rare, heightened fear, forcing prisoners to confront mortality and purpose. Post-crisis, many found strength in camaraderie and shared humanity. For Ellis, the turning point reshaped perspective. Doubt gave way to resilience. Guilt for fighting a flawed nation persisted, but the camp's equality, however forced, proved a counterpoint. Shame for America's contradictions fueled determination to survive and challenge them. The guard's remark, though fleeting, highlighted ideology's fragility. Prisoners' debates revealed mutual growth. White airmen, once indifferent, acknowledged systemic wrongs. The raid's fear unified them, showing survival as a shared goal. This chapter captures the turmoil, doubts, guilt, and shame confronted through reflection. Humanity emerged stronger, rooted in small acts like shared stories or guards' adherence to rules. The letter from home, a symbol of connection, reinforced this resolve, anchoring Ellis for the routines and liberation ahead. The crisis marked a pivot, transforming uncertainty into a quiet commitment to endure and prove worth beyond prejudice. Liberation arrived with the rumble of armored vehicles for Lieutenant John Ellis, a composite figure inspired by Tuskegee airmen like Alexander Jefferson. In early 1945, General Patton's Third Army breached the gates of Starlock Luft 3 in Poland. Guards surrendered, their rifles lowered as prisoners cheered. The barbed wire that had defined months of captivity stood open, a symbol of freedom regained. Ellis emerged, weary but alive, amidst the chaos of release. Allied medical teams provided immediate care, treating malnutrition and minor injuries. Food parcels, canned goods, and bread replaced the camp's meager rations. The transition was swift yet disorienting. Prisoners, including Ellis, boarded trucks to processing centers, then ships bound for America. The journey home stirred mixed emotions. Memories of camp routines, roll calls, shared letters, and fleeting moments of humanity faded against the anticipation of return. Yet the reality awaiting them was complex. Stepping onto American soil, Ellis faced a jarring contrast. At the disembarkation point, signs directed whites one way and colored another, reinstating segregation, absent in German camps. The irony stung. Equality experienced in enemy territory vanished at home. White posts, who had shared barracks and stories, now moved to separate facilities. The gratitude expressed by bomber crews in captivity felt distant. Ellis clutched a bundle of saved letters, including the one from his mother that had symbolized hope. These mementos anchored him, reminders of resilience amid adversity. The aftermath was bittersweet. Freedom regained, but within a society still divided. Civilian life loomed, with teaching jobs or other professions as goals. Yet barriers persisted. Segregation, limited opportunities, and the Tuskegee Airmen's combat achievements were rarely acknowledged in mainstream narratives. The legacy of their actions began to take shape. The Tuskegee Airmen record 112 aerial victories, lower bomber loss rates, and jet kills in Berlin challenged both Nazi and American racial prejudices. Their captivity experiences, where integration occurred naturally, highlighted the absurdity of segregation. In camps, white airmen had thanked Ellis for red-tailed escorts, bonds forming across racial lines. These interactions, impossible in the U.S. military, planted seeds for change. The Pittsburgh Courier's Double V campaign victory against fascism abroad and racism at home used the airmen's successes as evidence. Black newspapers celebrated their feats, though mainstream press often ignored them. The contrast with German awareness was stark. Luftwaffe pilots reportedly nicknamed them Schwarzwagelmenschen, acknowledging their skill. Meanwhile, many Americans remained unaware black pilots existed, a deliberate omission by the War Department. Post-war, the airmen faced uncertainty. While white units prepared for victory parades, the 332nd Fighter Group confronted questions about their future. The Army Air Forces planned to maintain segregation. Despite the airmen's proven excellence, Ellis, like many, returned to civilian life with quiet resolve. Teaching or community work offered paths forward, but discrimination persisted. The letters carried from Starlock Luft 3 served as reminders of endurance and humanity. Historical records show the broader impact. In 1948, President Harry Truman signed Executive Order 9981, integrating the U.S. military. The Tuskegee Airmen's combat record and captivity experiences influenced this decision, proving capability transcended race. Their treatment in POW camps, equal to white officers under Geneva Protocols, exposed segregation's flaws. Benjamin Davis, who led the 332nd, became the Air Force's first black general in 1954, a milestone rooted in their legacy. That the aftermath extended beyond policy. The airmen's story inspired civil rights advancements. Their achievements, though underreported for decades, gained recognition over time. In 2007, President George W. Bush awarded the Congressional Gold Medal to surviving airmen, with only 300 pilots present after a 60-year wait. Ellis's experiences, combat, captivity, and return reflected a broader struggle. The ethical lesson was clear. Humanity persisted despite ideological barriers. In camps, guards followed rules, and prisoners built community. The letter from home, a symbol of connection, had sustained hope. These small acts, shared cigarettes, respectful nods, integrated barracks, challenged prejudice. The legacy of these actions reshaped perceptions, proving excellence and dignity could dismantle myths. This chapter traces the transition from captivity to freedom. The surrender of guards marked the war's end, but the return to a segregated America underscored ongoing battles. Memories of camp life, equality, and adversity guided Ellis and others. The legacy of their actions contributed to military integration and civil rights progress, with ethical reflections on humanity's triumph over division. The story sets the stage for a final reflection on long-term impact, where the airmen's contributions reshaped history. The experiences of Lieutenant John Ellis, a composite figure inspired by Tuskegee airmen like Alexander Jefferson, resonated far beyond the barbed wire of Starlock Luft. 3. Decades after World War II, the impact of the airmen's actions, both in combat and captivity, continued to shape history. Their story challenged deeply rooted racial prejudices, influencing military policy and societal change. In 1948, President Harry Truman signed Executive Order 9981, mandating the integration of the U.S. Armed Forces. The Tuskegee Airmen's record 112 aerial victories, superior bomber protection, and the destruction of advanced Met-262 jets in 1945 provided undeniable evidence of capability. Directly contributing to this landmark decision, their treatment in German POW camps, where they were integrated with white officers under Geneva Convention protocols, exposed the absurdity of American segregation. Equality in enemy territory stood in stark contrast to divided barracks and dining halls back home. The legacy extended to civil rights advancements. The airmen's achievements, though often ignored by mainstream media, were celebrated in black newspapers like the Pittsburgh Courier. Its Double V campaign victory against fascism abroad and racism at home highlighted their dual struggle. Benjamin Davis, who led the 332nd Fighter Group, became the Air Force's first black general in 1954, a milestone rooted in the airmen's proven excellence. Recognition came slowly. In 2007, President George W. Bush awarded the Congressional Gold Medal to surviving airmen, with only 300 pilots present after decades of obscurity. For Ellis, the return to civilian life meant navigating persistent discrimination. Teaching or community roles offered paths forward, but barriers remained. The letters he carried from captivity, especially the one from his mother, symbolized resilience, reminding him of the strength drawn from family and community. Ethical reflections emerge from these experiences. In Stalag Luft 3, humanity persisted despite ideological divides. Guards, trained in Nazi racial doctrine, adhered to protocols, allowing letters and treating officers equally. White POWs, particularly B-17 crews, thanked Ellis for red-tailed escorts, forming bonds impossible in segregated America. These interactions shared stories, a guard's cigarette, or a nod of respect revealed cracks in prejudice. The letter, a symbol of connection, underscored the power of small acts. Facilitated by the Red Cross, it defied Nazi ideology's dehumanizing narrative, offering hope and dignity. Why did such humanity surface in enemy camps but not in the US? This question drove reflection. The airmen's captivity exposed the fragility of racial myths. As evidence of their skill and character dismantled assumptions. The long-term impact transcended policy. Books, films, and oral histories gradually brought the Tuskegee Airmen's story to light. Pilots like Lee Archer, with 4 confirmed victories, faced disbelief in civilian life. As he noted, "Nobody believed me anyway," yet their record 96 distinguished flying crosses, 744 air medals, and multiple unit citations stood irrefutable. The airmen inspired generations, proving excellence could challenge systemic barriers. Their captivity experiences, where integration occurred naturally, offered a model for equality. Ethical lessons centered on humanity's capacity to prevail. Guards followed rules despite beliefs. Prisoners built community across divides. These acts, though small, carried weight, showing that dignity could endure in adversity. Historically, the airmen's legacy is well documented. Their 1,578 combat missions, 15,000 sorties, and 179 bomber escorts reshaped perceptions. The Berlin mission of March 1945, downing 3 jets, earned a Distinguished Unit citation. Captivity narratives, as in Jefferson's memoirs, highlight integration and mutual respect among people. The contrast with American segregation fueled advocacy. The Double V campaign used their successes to push for equality, influencing civil rights leaders. The 1948 Integration Order was a direct outcome, with Davis's promotion marking progress. The 2007 medal ceremony, though late, affirmed their place in history. Only a fraction of the original 16,000 airmen, including fewer than 1,000 pilots, survived to witness it. For Ellis, the legacy was personal and collective. The letter from home, preserved through captivity, symbolized not just family, but the broader struggle of Black Americans. It anchored him through doubts and crises, reinforcing resolve. The airmen's story combat prowess, humane captivity, and post-war advocacy challenged Nazi and American racial doctrines. Ethical reflections focus on this triumph. Humanity overcame prejudice through evidence and interaction. The airmen fought to wars against fascism and racism, and their victories reshaped both. This chapter concludes the narrative, highlighting long-term impact. From propaganda to respect, their actions proved capability transcended race, leaving a legacy of progress and dignity that endures.